Hi, I'm the Thesterninator, and every Monday at 8 p.m. I drop a poll on my Patreon. That poll tells us what the Wednesday video is going to be. To give you a little bit more insight on how that whole process works and why this was probably a mistake, is Monday at 8 p.m. I drop that poll.
That runs for 24 hours until Tuesday at 8 p.m. Tuesday at 8 p.m., I find out what the Wednesday video is going to be.
Meaning I really only have 4 to 6 hours to draw, create, edit, and post the video. That's not a ton of time, but it is a very specific type of challenge. The first week that I ran this, we got Poppy playtime. That was a problem, because I knew nothing about Poppy playtime. I spent a good amount of time researching the subject before even getting into the art aspect. The next week we got Undertale, which I haven't played since it first came out. So a lot of the lore, I went in confidently believing, yeah, I remember what this all is. I was wrong. Now we have Hazbin Hotel. Why is this so different? Because I know Hazbin Hotel.
Take that, depression!
I felt like I didn't have any problems. I was wrong. Again. You see, the concepts and designs of the characters across the board for VivziePop stuff is that they're a little complicated. They have stripes and spots and stars and patterns and designs and concepts and wings and all this crazy stuff going on, which isn't just details of the design, but are key details of the design. They're what make that character that character. So how do you apply all of that into a single Pokemon design? I don't know. I'm recording this before I've started doing the art, so we'll find out in like 2 minutes, maybe? I don't know. I'll see you there. Yes, today we are drawing Hazbin Hotel characters as Pokemon. I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern. Welcome to the channel, and I am delighted to be taking part in this video today because I get to draw one of my favorite shows as Pokemon. Hazbin Hotel first appeared on YouTube October 28th of 2019, but over the course of several years and a lot of hard work from the creators was moved onto Amazon Prime January 19th of 2024. Since then, it's gained a huge following and has amassed a ton of popularity. So why not take on this challenge of turning Hazbin Hotel into Pokemon? Especially with the new season dropping in 2025 and little hints and clips kind of leaking here and there. But regardless of that, let's hop into the video. So I knew where I wanted to go. I knew where I wanted kind of some of our final forms to be on some things, but thought, let's start smaller rather than going all in. What is smaller, more diminutive, more minion-like than our Egg Boys? So I decided to make an Egg Boy Pokemon first. It's small, it's feeble, and it'll allow us some space to grant some evolutions to things later. It was actually kind of interesting how everything kind of rolled together as I went through the process. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but how each area of inspiration and character that I was using as a prompt kind of rolled into the next. Starting with this one, I went in, I drew this egg, had this one Yoki eye idea that I really liked, and I really wanted it to work with a design, but that design wasn't going to be this one. I ended up scrapping the whole thing and starting over because I felt like I was just kind of, honestly, phoning it in. Egg Pokemon? Well, we have an egg Pokemon. We have Execute, and I don't know. I didn't quite know what to do with it. I played around a little bit and came up with this inspiration about snake eggs. Snake eggs aren't egg-shaped as we know them. They're much more oblong, much more longer, and I thought of this face made of these multiple shapes that almost looks like parts that you would punch out of an egg. So when you're gonna scramble an egg in shell, you'll usually use a puncher that'll do that. So I gave it this fun little shape that also happens to mimic the idea of a very worrisome face. The Egg Boys are not brave, they are stupid, which sometimes is the same thing in the show. Going and stalking overlords and doing that type of reconnaissance. But I went with that because I felt like it mimics the idea of this worried and kind of sad type of shape, but it still allows me that Yoki yellow eye inside. Also, being that this isn't our world with plain white eggs, I decided to give it these spots all around it. You may be also wondering, hey, the Egg Boys have arms and legs and top hats and things. Where is all that? Well, with these designs, I never try to do a one-to-one. I feel like that's just kind of phoning it in. So you'll see why I made these decisions in just a moment. But for now, this is Yo-Kid. What is an egg boy but a yolk kid? So this is a pure normal type, and it's not very strong, but the thing that allows it to have some force is its connection to our next Pokemon. This Pokemon is based off of Sir Pentious, one of the best characters in the series, if not the best, one of my absolute favorites, and I wanted to make a snake. How do you not, right? It's a snake. So I went with a snake and thought, well, he's a cobra, and I initially thought of the cobra kind of neck fan hood thing, and thought, well, that feels way too much like Arbok. That feels like I'm creating something that already exists, and it is an area of inspiration that lends itself to this type of animal inspiration, but I don't know, I wanted to find a way to make it different. So I instead thought, what if the connection between this Pokemon and Yo-Kid was that this Pokemon really wants to have this army of minions. It wants to have these egg boys following it around, and so it kind of nurtures this clutch of eggs. And in a way that allows Yo-Kid to have some purpose as well. It's almost this symbiotic relationship. Some believe that this Pokemon is actually the evolution of Yo-Kid, but that's yet to be determined. What do you think works better in the lore for this world? Let me know down in the comments. Should Yo-Kid evolve into this Pokemon, or should they have just this weird symbiotic parasitic relationship to one another? I see it that Yo-Kid wants to be safe and protected under the watchful eye of something much bigger and grander, and this Pokemon wants to have a small army. So it's perfectly happy protecting those Yo-Kid if they're wandering into its clutch of eggs. I also had to capture a lot of details into this. Like I said, Vivziepop puts a lot of detail and energy into her designs, and how do you do that with a snake? Very simple, very easy, so I just went ahead and grabbed some of the ideas and concepts that allow us to know that this is Sir Pentious. Mainly those eyes, mainly that coloring, bringing the hood down so that it looks almost more like it's protecting its clutch of eggs, which also works because that's the direction that Sir Pentious' hood angles. So he's protecting this clutch of eggs. I also see it almost too, like as he wraps his body around, he's maybe able to extend that hood and cover the top into this little dome. And I think that works really well for a character who's as cowardly as Sir Pentious is, at least at the beginning of the series. So I feel like it kind of works in a couple different angles, you just need a little bit of imagination to make it work. But I'm interested in your thoughts on it. I like to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. I actually go through those fairly often and read them a lot. Get a lot of people saying, hey, I don't know if Stern's gonna read this. I do. Very, very often I do. But if you really want to talk and really want to have some communication, head on over to the Discord, which is linked down below in the description. I hang out in there every day. I try to talk and be a part of the communication and be a part of the conversation as much as I can. So if you want to hang out with a group of talented artists like the 900 and some odd members that are currently there, maybe you'll be member 1000, then check out that link in the description. I'm hoping that we'll get to see you there. Back to Sir Pentious Pokemon. Yeah, it turned out to be a little bit more complicated because it has a lot of details. For a snake, details are something that really make it up because it's a snake. Big long tube, easiest balloon animal to make, so adding those details really made it feel alive. So I introduced to you Yo-Cobra. Like I said, I don't know if it has a evolutionary connection to Yo-Kid. You let me know which is more interesting. For the shiny, I went with this color that really encapsulates the ending of that first season where, you know what, I won't spoil it for you for those of you who haven't seen it, but you'll get it if you watch the show. You can see it's not a very big Pokemon, but its body is mostly coiled. So when it is worrisome and protected, it's much smaller than its true size. Coming up next, I want to grab another fan favorite character who has some of the best songs in the series. Loser Baby is my national anthem. So I had to draw Angel Dust. I wanted to start with a first stage where it's just this little, like, almost schoolboy-esque type of character. And yeah, it's a spider. Angel Dust is a spider. So it's a spider. I found that with a lot of these drawings, it was one or the other. Either, hey, you need to add a ton of stuff to make this make sense, or there's so much stuff that you have to figure out what to cut out to make stuff make sense. For example, I thought, what if this was a 3-stage bug line and the middle one was a cocoon-like Pokemon, kind of like we see in Metapod or Kakuna? But it felt a little too leather and zippery, so I decided to go without. So this is going to be just a 2-stage, and that's part of the whole process, is what can you cut out, what can you maintain, what can make sense to be added, and what can make sense to be removed while not changing the whole idea of the character. For Angel Dust, I knew that I had to go simple for this first design, so I kept the stripes. I kept a lot of the eye color. I know Angel Dust has 2 different colored eyes. I just went with the black and red one. And I kept kind of the bow tie type of shape that exists on the neck, as well as this floof of hair. It gets a little bit different, a little bit changed in the next form, but being that this is a first form and is based much on like a schoolboy, I wanted to give it that smooth, kind of coiffed type of feel so that we can see it become a little bit more messy as this Pokemon evolves. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and why it ties into the lore in just a second, because for the moment, we're going to look at Aractot. Aractot is a term comprised of arachnid and tot, meaning child. It is a pure bug type and is pretty little. I love its 4 little legs and its almost jammy type of feel. Not super powerful, but trust me, this is going to turn into one of my favorite designs of the episode. This episode actually has a lot of designs that I consider my favorite, but this is definitely one of them. I had to take Angel Dust and turn it into a Pokemon. That is no easy feat, because Angel Dust is inspired by a spider. But when you think of a spider, you think of this large bulbous body, whereas Angel Dust is thin and live. And how do you take into account the inspiration of him being a, you know, that whole thing, a movie star of types? How do you incorporate that into the Pokemon aesthetic and into the Pokemon vibe? It was hard. This is what you're looking at is actually probably my 3rd or 4th attempt, and that's after making several attempts just in my head on what I could do. I went with this almost kickboxy type of fighter. The idea that they're able to defend themselves and has this wide stance, almost like their legs are a trap or a cage. Which, if you know Angel Dust, you'll kind of understand what I'm getting at with that. I'm trying to be PG here. Was able to bring in a little bit more of the color for Angel Dust, including, as you'll see soon, those black boots, which are iconic to the character. I made that floof of chest fur out of the initial bow tie from the previous form. And I was able to make the hair kind of move a little bit differently, feel a little bit more, not flowy, a little bit more harsh, a little bit more static, like it's not gonna move and sway. Feels very fighty, but it's not a fighting type, I'll say that. And yeah, I think if you're disappointed on hearing that this design isn't fighting type, I think you'll be excited to hear what type it is once we get there. Especially if you like the music of the show. It's a big reference to that. I decided to go ahead and give him mandibles to, again, reinforce that spider type of energy that we're going for, and just make it feel like it is on the attack. Not so much like it's seeking an attack, but more that it is offended. And Angel Dust is often offended. Angel Dust is a character who is very specific, knows who they are, even if other people don't or don't respect it. Angel Dust knows who they are. So I went with a rectangle. Arachnid tangle. It also sounds like rectangle, which is the shape that leg trap makes. And it is, of course, a poison bug type. Like I said, if you like the music, that'll ring true to you in a couple different ways. People tend to really, really like that song. It's not one of my favorites, but I see the value in it. Also, for the stats, you'll see that we got a big bump up to that, being that it's a rectangle. I made them the total synonymous forwards and backwards. But moving on, I want to hop into our, let's call it our box legendary of our Hazbin Hotel region. What would the region be called? I'm trying to think about it. What would it be called? Because we have the Helluverse, right? So what would a Hazbin Hotel region be called? I don't know. I'm sure you'll let me know down in the comments. I need to hurry up and get on to talking about this concept because this is the character Lucifer, Charlie's dad. And there were so many things that I wanted to bring into this, and I feel like I nailed a lot of them. It was definitely one of the more difficult to translate over, but I'm happy with where we ended up. I'll say that. I made the body as bulbous as it is, and you know, Lucifer in the show, he's not a big bulky dude, but there's so much areas of inspiration to draw in. Snakes, apples, circus tents, all very big and loud concepts. So I made the body this big apple, or at least it feels like an apple, very apple adjacent in concept and design. And I actually go through and try making it almost this crystal apple before I move away. I kind of realized that crystals along with pinstripes, along with everything else going on is gonna be a bit much. So ignore that part for now. It gets 100% changed. The body is an apple. You see this long windy tail coming out almost like a snake worming its way through the apple. I really wanted to avoid getting into Applin territory, and I feel like I did, but at the same time it's a reptile in an apple. Like, what can you do? I also made some cuts to the apple to almost feel like a suit, so it has these shoulder points on it which feel like a suit, but they're also able to close in those sides, and those cuts along the front function as a second mouth while also appearing like the lapel of a ringmaster's suit. Here I go in and I just make the stripes. I end up working a little bit here and kind of reimagining some of the stuff afterwards, how stuff could work, how things could be more interesting, and maybe I'll hop into it. I think, okay, I'm kind of all over the place. Part of the structure of this body is that it looks like an apple. The other part is that it looks like a snake. The other part is that it looks like a big top hat. And all of those things kind of work in tandem. That second mouth on the chest is able to open up. The arms are able to fold into the body to create a long, giant serpent that also looks like an apple. So we're able to put away some of that circus energy to create this big winding serpent. I always liked the idea of legendaries and mythics and Pokemon that are a little bit more powerful, almost having these multiple forms. I feel like it just makes them feel so much bigger and so much more exciting. Like, I think of Zygarde and how it has its percentage forms, and I think that's super cool. Definitely, when that was introduced, I thought, this is what every Pokemon should be. Well, maybe not what every Pokemon should be, but I wish every Pokemon was as cool as this. And so having that form change ability, I think, is really cool. And yeah, this is Manzivile. Manzivile doesn't sound very much like Lucifer, the character, but it does sound a lot like manzanita, which is the Spanish word for apple, and vile, which is a term used to associate with the devil. Being that, it is of course a dark type. We're gonna have a lot of dark types throughout this, and a fairy type, because I feel like that captures that circus energy too. I was told in the last video, fairy floss is a reference to cotton candy. It's another name for cotton candy, so kind of works, kind of makes sense. You also notice its total is 666, and its shiny brings in a more purpley hue. But before we move on, we don't often get one box legendary, right? If Manzivile is a box legendary, who's on the other box? Well, of course, that would be Alastor. So I decided Alastor would be our second big bad legendary thing. And boy oh boy, friend oh friend, man oh man, geez oh golly gosh, Alastor has so much going on. Alastor is Haitian Creole. Alastor is a radio host. Alastor is a cannibal. Alastor is a deer. Alastor is referencing the 1930s and transatlantic accent. Alastor is impossible. So I went in gathering some things that are very important. One is I knew that he had to be smiling. Deer don't often smile, but I had to find a way to put it. Next up, I wanted to grab that haircut, the very specific haircut, and I thought using the deer ears to make that happen, it's very warpy, very twisty, and I thought that really, really worked. it almost makes it feel like it has 4 ears, like it's listening at all times, and I feel like that kind of works for the character. Next up is a fun little detail that I want to talk about that you may not notice or even understand, but I gave him this shoulder blade that kind of pops up over the flesh there. There are videos of deer that have been injured in the woods and continue to just survive despite being terribly injured. One of them I saw, and it's stuck with me for a while, is one that its shoulder blade was actually very much damaged and popping up in a very odd way, but also predators like cheetahs and lions, these big cats, tend to have those protruding shoulder blades like that as well. And so I wanted to take this deer and twist in as many predator aspects as I could. It has those long and sharp teeth. It has that shoulder kind of popping out there. I also wanted to bring in Alastor's coat, so rather than a tail, the whole body kind of moves backward in that way and moves upward around the neck, almost like a big high collar. Ultimately, I feel really happy with this design. There was a lot that I had to get, and I know I'm gonna get some people saying, where's the radio inspiration? I don't know. I had to make some decisions here. Maybe it'll be in the ability type. Like I always say in these videos, I'm not good at figuring out abilities, so if you have an idea or a concept for ability for these Pokemon, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear about those. You guys are so much better at that than I am, and maybe that's where we can bring in the Radio Demon's radio to the equation. Let me know down in the comments. But for the moment, this is Sevadir. Sevadir's name comes from Sef, which is the Haitian Creole word for deer. It also has Vood, as in voodoo, and deer, as in deer. Altogether, that combines into Sevadir. Sevadir is a psychic dark type, and one that is, again, our other box legendary. You can see for its size, it's much larger than a deer, and while its stats are equal to the other box legendary, Manzavile, they're moved around a little bit. I felt like both really deserve that 666 total, because it just kind of works for totals, being very powerful, but also referencing the initial prompt. For the shiny, you see I got that voodoo green for Alastor incorporated in there. But speaking of that voodoo green for Alastor, why not draw his handy little henchman? I thought for a long time how I wanted to handle this, how I wanted to do this, and thought, well, if I'm gonna draw a cat that's associated with gambling and money and things of that nature, why not just go all in? Why not just create a Meowth, a regional Meowth to the Helluverse in that way? So I went in and started designing, thinking, okay, I know what I want to do here. It was an interesting experiment in design because it was one of the first times when drawing these Pokemon that I had to think of color first. You know, the Meowths, especially when looking at Meowth versus Alolan Meowth, they look very similar line art wise. Of course, they're in different stances and things, but with this design, I had to think about color because otherwise I'm just drawing Meowth. So I made some slight and subtle changes. I've swapped out the multiple whiskers that Meowth has for those big eyebrows that Husk has. I swapped out the coin on the forehead for what will become a poker chip, which I think is really, really fun. Let me be proud of that decision. I thought that was super cool. I thought that was going to be really fun. So yeah, I swapped out the coin on the head for a poker chip, and then I went and designed kind of the Poke currency, what would be on the poker chip itself. Threw that on there, ton of fun. I put on the chest that red diamond. I picture it'd be really cool in this universe to have multiple variations of this Pokemon. One for each suit of cards. Maybe they're collectors. Maybe big gamblers actually go out of their way to go out and try and collect all 4 and then are stuck with these cats that they don't want, but they're so addicted to gambling that they're like, well, I can't get rid of it. That's losing part of the collection. But yeah, went in. I haven't even talked about the wings, but it has wings, and just kind of going in, finding ways to make this feel like its own Pokemon while also feeling like Husker. Husker's a great character. Like I said, Loser Baby, favorite song. So this is, whatever universe this is, Meowth. It is a dark type, which I know. Alolan Meowth is already dark type. But I mean, look at the thing. Look at the inspiration. Look at what we're drawing from. How could I not make it dark type? And trust me, when it evolves, it is so very different than what we already have. So speaking of which, why don't we take a look at that? Husker is a big cat, so why not make a big cat? He's almost like a lynx or like a bobcat. That's at least what I think of when I see like those tufts on his ears and the way that his face kind of curls out with the fur. Makes me think, yeah, that's very bobcat or lynx-esque. So I kind of went with that whole idea. Of course, I wanted to make sure that the wings were a prominent feature on this design while just playing around. I love Berserker, but I wanted to stick close to Persian with it being a big cat, very regal, very roundish face, but kind of a mix face shape wise between the two different Persians that we have. And yeah, there's not much more to say. For a concept that was so very designed, I played around a little bit just in my head with what it would look like to put all those symbols and insignias across this Husker Pokemon. And it made me sad. I ended up not doing that. I know that it's part of Husker's whole deal, but I feel like when you overcomplicate a design in that way, not to say that it's overcomplicated in a bad way, Husker's design is fantastic, but when you overcomplicate a design that's meant to go in a universe that doesn't fit that design, it looks weird, it looks wrong. So I ended up cutting out a lot of the decals and things that I was going to put on the wings. They're super bright and vibrant red, so I felt like just leaving them as is kind of worked its own magic. But yeah, maybe I will get to it. Maybe at some point I'll draw a full-on, much more Husker. Oh, I'll do a Mega. Oh, that'd be great. I'll do a Mega for this. If I do a Mega for this, I'll drop it on the Patreon. So, like I said, this poll all came from the Patreon. So head on over there, check that out. Every Monday I drop the poll for that. But I'm also dropping exclusive Pokemon and videos just for the Patreon. This week I dropped one. And we'll continue to do more of that. So this is Persorin. Persorin, I wanted to use that Persian name and just kind of put a twist on it. You can see, again, we have that voodoo green for the shiny. It is now a dark flying type. So take that, Alolan Persian. We got a flying type. There are still an absolute ton of Hazbin Hotel characters that I'd love to do as Pokemon. There's a ton of Helluva Boss characters that I'd love to do as Pokemon. We haven't gotten to Adam, which I think would be wonderful. We haven't gotten to Vaggie, which I think would be amazing, having her and Lute as almost two separate versions of the same Pokemon. I think would be fun. Nifty isn't on there yet, so of course, we're gonna hop back into this stuff, especially with Season 2 coming out and more characters being released. But if we're gonna be doing that and gonna have more of these characters, there needs to be someone who could be their trainer, who can, rehabilitate these Pokemon. They may seem bad, they may seem scary, a lot of them are dark type, and I'm sure that makes people kind of worried. But who could train these Pokemon? Who could rehabilitate them in that way? Well, of course, it's no one other than Trainer Charlie, a gym leader of dark types, but also kind of has others as well. This is not a part of our Costawest Monday video stuff. I just like to build out the universe a little bit, have some fun with it. So yes, Charlie is our dark type gym leader. She is very talented in working with Pokemon who have been kind of abused or mismanaged and just kind of lash out at other people. Luckily, she's able to turn them around. It may not be at the speed that she or others want it to be, but she's able to do so. I think a Pokemon Rehabilitation Center type of thing would actually be really, really cool in the series. I'd love to see stuff like that, where it's like Pokemon who have been in difficult situations or are just really rough, kind of transformed around. So as I was drawing this, I kept thinking about that idea, and as I was drawing all these Pokemon, I kept thinking about that idea and how interesting that would be to just like the series or the games or what have you. I mean, you look at characters who have those types of journeys in Pokemon, and they're so memorable. I just saw a TikTok come across my phone the other day that was the retelling of Charmander's story in the Pokemon anime, And it is heartbreaking every time. But the retelling of it did it in such a way, I guess it's from one of the newer seasons. I grew up with the original telling of it, but in the newer seasons, I guess it's very much Charmander fighting to reclaim its position as, hey, I want to prove that I can be a part of my former trainer's team. And then when he gets the chance to join his former trainer team, he's like, no, I just wanted to prove that I could be better than you, that you screwed up. And I think that that's the whole point of Hazbin Hotel, is we've got to get better, we've got to repent and be good people and prove that we deserve to be in heaven, but all the while learning to love the people down there in hell. That's going to be a catch-22. There's going to be a problem with that in season 2, I'm guessing, is where people are leaving and it's like, but wait, these are my friends now. That'll be interesting. I'm curious. What are your predictions? I know leaks have come out, so just be cautious on that stuff as we talk about it, whether that be in the comments or on the Discord. Be cautious about those things. Some people don't want to have those leaks spoiled for them, but it makes me nervous to ask for speculation on stuff. So be aware, be cautious, be happy, be healthy. But for the moment, this is our Charlie trainer. She's been on screen for a little bit here, I guess. But this is our Charlie trainer, our gym leader, our dark type specialist, and she's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I'm super glad that we were able to draw these out today. I'm hoping that there will be more in the future. Depends on who wins those polls. So this week we had Kaiju, we had Hazbin Hotel, we had Five Nights at Freddy's, we had Undertale, we had all sorts of stuff. Bendy and the Ink Machine was on there as well. Backrooms was on there, all sorts of fun stuff. So go and check out the Patreon where you can hop into that poll. It's free, but if you want to get those exclusive Pokemon that I'm going to be dropping every week, go ahead and subscribe. I feel terrible saying stuff like that, but speaking of subscribers, speaking of supporters, let's go down this list really quick. With our Ko-fi Pokemaniacs, we have Tony F. and Ko-fi supporter. Our Patreon novice trainers, we have Jesse Badger and Dan Bush. And our master trainers class on that Patreon is Teacup Cryptid. Thank you so much for your support, guys. It sounds like the rest of you know where to find me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.